Hey, what's going on guys? Tanmay here for Telesco Learnings and welcome back to another video tutorial of JavaScript, especially the regular expressions part. So in the previous couple of videos, in fact in the previous last 3 videos, we've been going through regular expressions in JavaScript, and in the previous video of this playlist we saw mobile number validation. So if you have missed that video, do check it out because some of the things that we used there are going to be coming in this video also. Basically we're just going to be continuing that same code and changing the regular expression over here to validate a proper email address. And yes, this tutorial is important because email and mobile number validations are pretty much used a lot in many cases, in fact in projects also. So the regular expression that we are going to be looking in today for emails is kind of important and it's not very straightforward. So with that being said, let's get started with today's topic. Okay, so as you can see on the screen on the browser, we have some output. So we have a text box, we have a button, and we are going to be inputting some email and we are going to be validating this. And then you have this entire black image. So this is an image. This is a simple image which I have just created to explain you how we are going to be doing the email validation. And let me just show it to you. So this is that image that I'm just loading in the HTML document. So in the body tag, we have a form. We have an input type text box. This is pretty much coming from the last video that we've done. So I'm not retyping everything over here. We have a label which is currently hidden over here. It will be visible and it will turn red and it will display invalid when the email is invalid or the regular expression does not match, and it will be green and valid when the regular expression matches. Right now it is hidden, so it's not visible. So if I click on this button right now, it is showing valid because we still have to type in some regular expression. So if I just type in A over here and hit submit, it is invalid, right? So this is something that is going to happen. So this is where we are actually going to be writing the complete regular expression for the email. And then this is that image that is email.png, which is coming from the folder which I just showed, and I've given it a width of 380 pixels. Okay, so this was the entire HTML code, and on the on click of the button we are calling a validate function. In the validate function, this is that complete function. We are taking the text from the text box using the get element by id and accessing that text box. We are accessing the value, that is whatever we are inputting in this text box, we are storing it in this text variable, and then we are creating a regular expression object and we are using the test method of this object and passing in the text that we just took in from the text box. And if the regular expression matches, we are showing valid. We are making the visibility as visible of this label and we are changing the color to green. And if it does not match, then we are changing the text by using the inner HTML property to invalid. We're changing the visibility as visible, but we are changing the color as red. Okay. So this is the entire code, but this is something that we also did in the previous video. So if you have watched that, this is pretty basic to understand. So the only thing that we are going to be changing over here is the actual regular expression, okay? So coming to this regular expression, let's just take a look at this image. So when you perform email validation, it's not just one thing. So an email has a particular pattern. So as you can see, I have divided an email into 4 different parts. So typically an email can be divided into 4 different parts, or you can say patterns. So the first part is where you enter your name. So in the example, you can see Tanmay, and I have added digits also. So the first part can have any letters, any numbers, dots or hyphens. Okay, so this is the part 1. Then we have a @ sign in between. It is compulsory to have @ in your email address, right? Then the second part is the domain name. For example, Simple Snippets or Telesco or Google or Gmail or anything. Then we have a dot, which is again compulsory. So this has to be there in your email address. Then we have the extension. So the third part is the extension part, wherein you have com or co.in or co.uk. So depending upon what type of extension, you can have an extra part, okay? So you have one extension that is .com or .in or .net, but sometimes it is also like .co.in, right? So it is divided in 2 parts. So the fourth part is another extension which comes in with a dot, but it is optional. So typically this is how your email address can be divided into 4 different parts, and these are the 2 different examples. Tanmay11@simplesnippets.co.in. So this .in part can be optional. Sometimes it can be only .com. So it's not necessary, right? So that's why it is optional. So the domain name can have any letters or hyphens, right? You cannot have dot in the domain name. You cannot have @ in the domain name, but you can have numbers in the domain name. You probably must have seen the domain name, which is something like ways to SMS, right? So you can see ways to sms.com. So in the domain name, you can see we have a number 2. So that is allowed over here. We can also have something like a hyphen. So we have simple snippets. So simple-snippets.com. Something like that. In the third part, in the extensions part, we only have letters, right? And we have small letters. Usually we are going to be validating for small letters only. So we have .com, .in, .tech, .net, .org, and so on and so forth. And again for the fourth one also we have the same thing, that is we have a dot and then we have any letter. Okay, so this is how we are going to be splitting the email into 4 different parts and validating each part. So now let's go to the coding part and let's form the entire regular expression. So right now in the regular expression I have just typed in the syntax of how the regular expression should be created, and then I hope you know what is this caret and dollar sign. Basically whatever you want as an exact string should be entered in a caret and dollar sign. So the caret is the starting point of the string and dollar is the ending point of the string. So when something goes inside this, let's say I say ABC, so we are validating for exactly this string. So if there is anything extra other than ABC, ahead of ABC or before ABC, then it's going to be invalid. So if I say ABC, it is valid, but if I add any character more, it is invalid. However, if I didn't have this dollar and caret sign, and if I typed in ABCD, it would have been valid. You can see over here, and that is because now it is only looking for ABC as a pattern in the entire string. It is not considering the entire string as the pattern. Okay, so I have an understanding. So that's why we need to have the caret sign and the dollar sign, because we are going to be matching the entire string completely. Okay, so let's start with the first part, that is the name part. According to our conditions, we can have any letters, we can have any numbers, we can have dot, and we can also have hyphens. So what we're going to be doing is, as I mentioned, we're going to be splitting it into 4 different parts, right? So when you want to group or divide the entire regular expression into parts, you can use round brackets. So I can have 4 different round brackets for 4 parts over here. So in the first part, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a character set, obviously, because we can have complete number sets, we can have complete letters, we can have dot, and we can have hyphen, right? So here I'm going to start off with the character set. We've already seen what is character set, which comes in the square bracket. Inside that I'm going to say A to Z. We can also have capital letters over here. So I'm going to say capital A to capital Z, right? You can have a space in between, but I typically don't keep spaces. This is all fine. And the hyphen between A and Z tells that it is a range. And then we can also have 0 to 9, right? So this is our first part. So this is our first part out of the 4 different part of the email. So we are validating for the first part. Now apart from A to Z and 0 to 9, we can also have a dot or a hyphen. So again, this is something also that we have to mention inside the character set only. So when I say dot, if I type in dot directly, it will not be taken in as a proper validation, because when we use this just dot, it is actually treated as a special character which has a special meaning for validations. Let me just create another regex over here and I'll show you what this dot means. So the dot means a wildcard entry. Okay, so when I say A dot B, this means that I am looking for a string which starts from A, then the second character can be anything. So it can be AXB and it is going to be valid. It can be A1B, it is still going to be valid. It can be A@B and it is still going to be valid. So this dot means that in this case the middle character can be anything in the string, okay, and it's going to be valid. So this dot has a special purpose. So we cannot directly use this dot in our actual regular expression like this. So in order to use this dot, because we want dot in our name also, right? But we cannot directly use it because it is treated as a special character. So to not treat it as a special character, we have to use a backward slash. Okay, so till now in the character set we have A to Z in the small caps, we have A to Z in the large caps, then we have 0 to 9, and we defined a dot, and now lastly we just need a hyphen. So I'm just going to give hyphen over here. So this is the entire character set for our first part. So let me just first cut out these brackets and let's see if this first part is validated. So I'm going to say Tanmay over here and let's see if it is valid. Okay, so one thing I missed out over here is we need to tell how many characters are also going to be there, right? Right now when I define the character set, I'm defining only the first position over here. So this is something that I forgot to mention. So if I type in any one single character, it is always going to be valid, but we have not yet given how many times this character should be repeated, right? So this is just the first position. Now technically this name, that is the first part, can be of any length, because come on guys, we have sometimes very huge names, we have some weird usernames also sometimes in the email. So what we can do is, instead of giving a fixed value, let's say I just want to give a fixed value of 20. So what if some guy's name is very large and it exceeds 20 characters, right? So in this case, what I can do is I can actually give a hard-coded value. So I can say I want the string or the name to be 10 characters long, but then I only have to type in exactly 10 characters, otherwise it will be invalid. So I can also give a range over here. So I can say minimum 2 and maximum 10. And if it is in that range, it will be valid. So you can see it is coming valid right now. But this is very hard-coded values, right? The username can exceed 10 characters sometimes if you have long names or if you have some weird usernames also, right? So instead of using this hard-coded numbers, another way to go about this is just add a plus. Okay. So after you define the entire character set in the square brackets, if you add a plus ahead of it, it means that this character set pattern has to be applied to at least one or more than one characters in this entire string. So now it means I can have any length of characters which have this pattern as the first part because it is in this round brackets. So this is the first part, right? And it is still going to be valid. So you can see if I add more things, it is still going to be valid. So this is our first part. I hope you got how we did the first part. We said we want a character set which has a range from A to Z small caps, A to Z large caps, 0 to 9. Then we used a dot, but we cannot directly use a dot. So we used slash and dot, and then we used a hyphen. But this was just for the first position. So we want a lot of characters and that character string can vary dynamically. So we have different sized usernames for different cases. So that's why we used a plus sign so that we can have dynamic number of characters as the first part. Okay, so now let's move on to the second part. So for the second part, I'm again opening and closing round brackets. But before that, we have @ sign. So in between the first two parts, we have @ sign. So I'm going to write @ over here. So now if I say ABC, it's going to be invalid. But if I say ABC @, it's going to be valid. So you can see the first two parts are done. That is your name and @. So now we have a domain. Now the domain can have any letters, it can have numbers and or it can have hyphen. So it is pretty much similar to the first part, just that it cannot have a dot, right? Otherwise everything the first part has, second part also has, except the dot sign. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this entire character set and I'm going to paste it inside the second part, and I'm just going to remove the dot with the backslash. And again, domain name characters can be of any length. They're not very lengthy, but let's keep this dynamic. Let's keep this plus and not give it a fixed length or not give it a proper range. So let's test this again. So I'm going to say ABC @ simple. So basically what we did is we did the first your name, we did the @ sign and then the domain name. So right now it is coming valid. So we have tested it properly. Then we have a dot in between. So before we start with the third part, that is the extension part. So this is for the extension part. We have a dot in between. So I'm going to write dot over here as it is. So now let's do the extension part. So in the extension part, we have only A to Z letters. So even more simpler character set. So I'm just going to copy this character set, paste it over here. And we are only going to have A to Z. But typically what happens is the extension is not having a large size. You know, we have .com, .in, .net, .tech. But it doesn't typically exceed more than 20 characters, right? So I'm going to give it a range of 2, 20, which means that these characters A to Z should be repeated or should have at least 2 characters minimum and 20 characters maximum. Okay, so let's test this out. ABC @ let's say Telesco. Then we have a dot which we have validated for. So I'm going to say dot and then I'm going to say com. So there you go. We have basically done the first 3 parts properly. So if I have something like .c, it is going to say invalid because we need at least 2 characters, right? So we can have .co and it is going to be valid because sometimes we have .co.in, right? So that's why we need at least 2 characters. If we don't have this @ it is going to be invalid. So everything is pretty much working fine as of now. So this regular expression is actually a proper email validation regular expression, except that extension part which is optional. So if you know that your regular expression will not have co.in or 2 dots or this extra extension part, and you're just looking for a single .com or .in or .net, then you can use this regular expression as it is. But since we have this extension part, let's do that also. So I'm going to add one more round brackets for the extension part. And again, the extension part is also going to have a dot and then it is going to have a character set. So again, square brackets, character set, and before the character set, so we have to come outside the square brackets, we have a dot over here, right? And again, this is also going to be not ranging more than 20 characters. So we have co.in, co.uk, co.us. So only 2 characters, right? So typically the extension is not very long. So let's do this from 2 to 10 only. Okay, so we've pretty much basically done the entire regular expression. And this is that last part, and I just made a little bit of changes. I gave the range from 2 to 8 because 2 to 20 doesn't seem to be necessary. And you can see in the output I have abc@gmail.co.in and this is showing valid. If I have abc@gmail.com, if I submit, this is also valid. So if I didn't have this part, that is the last part, and if I tried to say abc@gmail.co.in, it would have given me an invalid sign. So that's why we need the last part also. And this is basically the entire email validation. One last character that can be added into this regular expression is the question mark character. So what this question mark does is, for the last entire round brackets part, that is the extension part, it makes it optional. So this question mark makes it optional so that whenever we enter a normal email also, even that is also validated. Okay, so the purpose of this question mark is to make the pattern which is immediately right next to it as optional. And since this entire pattern is enclosed in this round brackets that is grouped together, so this entire thing becomes optional. Okay, so yeah, this was email validation. And before I wrap up, let me tell you guys that this is not the only way to perform email validations. If you just Google email validation regular expressions, you'll find many different ways in which regular expression can be applied for emails, and that is because there is not one single way which does the email validations perfectly. So even this might not work in 100% cases, and there is a lot of debate as to which expression can be used to filter out 100% of legit emails, because hackers sometimes use a lot of tricks and different types of strings, different patterns to create weird emails. Sometimes regular expressions cannot resolve it. But yeah, just to let you know that there are different ways in which regular expressions can be done for email, because email, as you can see, is a little complex compared to other different validations. So yeah, that's it for this video, guys. I'm gonna wrap it up over here. I hope you got a good idea about regular expressions, especially the email validation. Let me know in the comments how this video was.